A growing business wants to build a standout employer brand to compete for top talent and position themselves as their best in the industry. But their needs are complex and ever evolving, and their workforce is now hybrid. They have to innovate to stay at the top, and they do. Hi LabMates, welcome to the Social Learning Lab, a podcast about social learning at work. In today's episode, we'll sit down with SKS Consulting psychologist and partner, Dr. Nate Whittier, and get the insider's perspective on social learning networks as a holistic approach to L&D. We'll hear how SKS is using their social learning network as part of their business strategy and how it has changed their work environment.
Hi, everybody. How are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
We're doing great over here. How about Rocio, Diego? How you guys doing?
I'm good. It's Friday.
It is Friday.
Routine, right? Like after the end of the week is coming and the weekend is coming. And for me, that's not much because I got 3 kids. So, that's just a very hectic time about to start. So sometimes I look forward to Monday.
You might be working harder over the weekend.
Yeah, for sure. How about you, Diego? How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm just ready to get this started and get this rolling.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are here today on the Social Learning Lab talking to Nate Whittier, who is, he's literally our favorite client. Let's move on to words. I apologize to any of our other clients who are listening right now, but Nate is our reading champion right now.
I'll take it.
Dr. Nate Whittier is a board certified psychologist, business psychologist specifically, and he is a partner at SKS Consulting Group. Since joining SKS in 2006, Nate has partnered with a variety of organizations to enhance the quality of their decision making in the critical areas of selection and development of key talent. He's conducted literally thousands of leadership assessments at various levels in the leadership pipeline, and internally, Nate leads up learning and development for SKS. So they're focusing on developing their new consultant training and onboarding. Performance management falls under that, career pathing, and then there is all of the implementation of tech-enabled learning. So he does an awful lot, and it's been really a pleasure to get to know Nate and his team at SKS, and we're really thrilled to have you on the podcast with us today, Nate. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I will also say you all are, I don't even want to call you a vendor because it's you're more than a vendor, but also our favorite partner. Let's put it that way. So apologies as well to any my other partners that might be listening.
Well, thank you. It's been I think we have similar philosophies. And since today we're talking about networked learning and social learning networks, I think it will be interesting to see, how you sort of came to align on that philosophy and why from our side we like it.
Sure.
So I'm excited. And if you're listening, today from wherever you are, whether you're in leadership or on the boots on the ground L&D or just in business, I'll be really interested to hear what you have to say. So as always, we invite you to share in the community. So to start, Nate, it would be great if you could tell us a little bit about the work your team is doing at SKS.
Sure. Yeah, I can maybe I'll talk about that in 2 buckets. One being more of the sort of day-to-day work that we do that's more client-facing, and then I can speak to kind of what we're doing internally to get better. I would say externally, as you said, Nicole, we're a group of business psychologists that do individual assessment. So that's kind of our primary service, and we do that for both leadership selection and development. And I'd say we're probably about 60-40 in terms of 60% is around selection and hiring decisions, and that could be internal or external folks who are applying for those roles. And then the other maybe 40% is more developmental, where we'll do a very similar assessment process, but it's geared toward helping that leader, grow, develop, maybe create a development plan. That's another service that we provide as well. And then we do some ongoing coaching around those plans as our clients ask for that. So that's really the work that we do. That's more client facing. We do occasionally do as well some team development, and so you can maybe imagine a situation where we've happened to assess all 8 members of an 8-person team. Will sometimes then get a request for hey, can you pull that data together in maybe more of an aggregate way and do some work with the team around team development and the establishment of team norms and things like that. So as I think about what we do, I think, it's individual assessment, but we try to apply that at the individual team and the organizational level. So that's a bit about our business. And then internally, I probably should start by just saying our three values are our partnership, insights, and excellence. And so that really drives a lot of both of what we do, both internally and externally. But internally, we're focused a lot around some initiatives related to client development. And so reaching out to clients, getting input and feedback around our offerings and what they like, how we could get better. We're doing a lot of operational enhancements with technology that are both sort of internally facing and externally facing. And then for me specifically, as you noted, Nicole, I'm more heading up the learning and development efforts. So a lot around this year, a lot around creating a more formalized training program for new consultants. We've been told by some of our new consultants that they're often even discouraged in graduate programs to go into consulting with the idea that, well, you can't really do that until you've got gray hair or no hair in my so,
yeah.
And so they've really been, I would say, pleasantly surprised and enthusiastic about finding a group that's willing to provide that training and that education to folks who are early career and new graduates. So a lot around that, and then last but not least, a lot around just with that value of excellence. There's a lot around just continuous improvement, getting better at what we do and how we do it, and I don't think you can do that without sort of factoring in considerations around diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. And so we're doing that again, both internally as well as thinking about how do we make sure that our assessment process is, inclusive and culturally sensitive and all of those things that are at the forefront these days as they should be. So that's a little bit about what we're doing.
Which is a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
the team is growing, but it's not
Yeah.
massive. And it's amazing to me what gets accomplished there. And having worked with your team, how kind and welcoming and kind of like aligned, that's not
Yeah.
kind of, they are aligned, it's really amazing to see.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. So I want to take you backwards before we go forwards, which is just to say, I know what the assessment process is like because I actually got to go through it as we built out, some of the things we've done for you. But what is SKS's assessment process? Because it's not like check a personality quiz, take a DISC assessment. It's really something quite unique in my opinion.
Yeah. I'd say probably that's a good way to set it up. I'd say that one of the biggest sort of differences between what we do and sort of what you're referencing there, Nicole, like a tool would be, we take this multi-method approach where, and we do that for a couple of reasons. One is that, the research would say that this combination of tools, this multi-method approach is the most predictive from a validity standpoint. So that's one big reason why we do it. The other reason is that it does allow us to sort of assess the whole person, right? So different tools have different strengths and limitations, and by combining certain tools, you can help to sort of mitigate that, right? So we would always say, using a tool is better than using nothing, but not nearly as good as using this combination of tools that really allow you to gain insight into the whole person, to take their context and situation into consideration. And I think at the end of the day allows us to be much more nuanced, much more accurate, and I think much more maybe sensitive to sort of what's going on for the person and their environment and their context. So specifically, what the process includes are essentially, I think about it in three buckets. So we've got some online tools that we administer that are personality related as well as problem solving related. So that's sort of one big bucket of standardized tools. And those tools are really good at identifying sort of underlying traits and dispositions that are predictive of performance. We also, the second bucket that I would mention would be a work simulation, which it can take a variety of forms, but it's essentially asking individuals to respond to some emails as well as engage in more of an interactive component. And that's our effort to actually see some behavior. So we know it's not exactly what they'd be doing on the job, but it's, again, there's enough overlap that we can gain some insight into how they might handle certain scenarios or situations. And then the third piece, which is a super important part as well, is the interview. So that's where we get that context. I sort of think about it as our opportunity to hear that person's story, and then interpret the rest of the data in light of that story. And then at the end, we'll sort of pull all that together, identify themes, share that back both with the organization and with the individual. Our goal, a lot of times we differentiate, as I did at the front of this, between development and selection. And I think that's just habit, and it makes sense. I've been challenging myself and our clients to think about it as more of a continuum where, yeah, we may be starting using this for selection purposes or to inform decisions, but it is developmental, regardless. And it is along the way as well, right? I think the person, gains insight into themselves just by completing it without even getting feedback, just by thinking about the questions. And then, of course, they do get feedback at the end, and we try to help them use that regardless of what they wind up doing next.
That's a big undertaking.
Yeah.
So we know I heard just in that small snippet, a ton of skills that someone would need to develop in order to be successful in that role. And I know that's not the only role. So maybe, would you mind telling us, Nate, a little bit about, the kind of learning and development that you need at your organization to stay competitive?
Yeah. Maybe I'll start by, I think you're right. It is a lot of different sort of skill sets that are needed to sort of effectively complete a process like that. Maybe I'll speak to that, like what some of those are, and then sort of how we try to approach learning and development around those things. So I would say, I'm sure I'm going to leave some things out, but I would say, what comes to mind right away in terms of the skill set needed would be, just solid interpersonal skills. As you're doing the interview with the individual, oftentimes it's the first time they've done something like this. Sometimes there's, really sort of a job on the line, so to speak. We don't make the decision, of course, but we're one input, and in what they do with us has some implications for that decision. And so they're, of course, nervous about that and want to put their best foot forward. And so I think what we do, I'm going to brag a little bit about our team. What we do really, really well, I think, is we help candidates feel supported, encouraged. They know, and it's genuine. They know that we want them to, put their best foot forward. We want them to show us sort of what they're capable of. And I'm always amazed at how many times I hear from candidates that, man, this was such an enjoyable experience. Even though I knew I was being evaluated this whole time, I didn't feel that way. Right. I felt supported. I felt encouraged. So I think our team does a really good job of that. And then there's some maybe more analytical kind of related skills that are required then, after that interview, as you're going and trying to integrate all of that data and pull it all together. It's sort of an analytical task in doing that. And then the third piece would be, you have to do something with that output then. And oftentimes it's both giving feedback to the client and to the individual. And so there's a certain amount of, as psychologists, especially early career, we're not always experts in business, but there is a certain amount of business acumen and sort of familiarity with business and the terminology that you need to sort of put it in that language as you're delivering that feedback. Mm-hmm. So I would say those are some of the, maybe some of the skills that are needed to do that successfully. In terms of how we address that, do you want me to talk about how we address it now with your help?
Oh, sure. I wasn't going to make the segue, but if you want to. So how are you tackling all of that, Nate?
Yeah, well, we're doing it much better now, again, with the help of you and the team here. We realized as we were hiring more and more people that we were often recreating the wheel. And, we would do sort of the same training with somebody, maybe a month apart. And then we also would sort of divvy it up across a partner. So as a small business, as you alluded to, I think we wear a lot of hats. And so, oftentimes the partners would sort of take on responsibility for the onboarding and the training, which we all love doing. But we did recognize the need to make it more efficient and also to make it more standardized. We did get some feedback from our new employees that, when I work with Nate, he tells me something a little bit different than what I hear from Marie when I work with her. And so we also recognize the need to get more consistent and reliable, I guess, in terms of how we provide that training. So right now we're using Workplace with your help, and we've got a lot of really great kind of tools and modules and lessons in there around the specific tools and inventories that we use. We actually, if I back up a little bit, we're also using it again with your help as this is focused around consultant training. There's also some sort of pre-boarding, I'll call it, materials that we have in the system that we're using with any employee that is new to SKS, and so that allows them to kind of get a head start on all of that new employee paperwork that everyone has to complete. And then once consultants come on board, though, they'll go through those various modules. We will, of course, have regular check-ins. So we don't use this as a substitute for face-to-face time, but really more of a supplement. And it allows us to provide different sort of mentoring and coaching face-to-face versus, let me give you a lecture on this tool. They've already done that, right? So we can really focus on, how do you use it? What questions do you have? Let's look at a use case. So we do that. We do some 360-degree feedback processes. We do some sort of check-ins, again, with the help of Workplace. We do, I'd almost maybe call it a little bit of a pulse check, just getting feedback from the team quarterly on how things are going. And then we also do, from a learning standpoint, we've got a monthly brown bag session, we call it. And that's really, we divvy it up across the team, and a team member will take responsibility for a session a month, and they'll lead a discussion on a topic of their choice. We started the year, actually, we heard from the team that there was a high level of interest in learning more about business. And so we actually started the year using that brown bag for almost like a mini MBA that I tended to lead. We got good feedback on that. I think after a while, of course, they got tired of hearing me talk, and so now it's fun to bring in the rest of the team and look at some other topics too. And then last but not least, I'd say, we have professional development funds that we allow folks to use yearly. And we're pretty flexible around that. Most of the time it's used for a conference, but we would even say, maybe there's some really cool trip that you want to take, and it's going to stretch or grow you in some way. And as long as you come back and tell us about that, you've got full right to use the funds for something like that. So we're trying to really, everyone, as you all know better than me, learns differently, right? So we're trying to come up with just a variety of methods and modalities for people to learn and share information.
Yeah, it's interesting because, one of the reasons we gave you the social learning network as sort of the strategy was because your team actually, well, first, it's very social, right? Like learning to take cues in interviews, learning to interact with your colleagues, learning how to analyze behaviors, all of that is inherently social. So that made sense to us. But the other thing is even how you talk about it's very holistic and very, it's like a little mini ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
There's like a lot of things that feed each other. So it's interesting because, to hear you talk about it, it just, it does still make sense to me, right? Why that philosophy works for you. And
you maybe knew this, Nicole. One thing though that was a pleasant surprise for me in implementing Workplace is some of the personal sharing that's happened on that platform. So of course nobody's going overboard, right? But people are posting, pictures from the weekend, or a picture, of the, we've got a lot of people having babies these days at SKS. Just got a picture of a new addition to a family 2 days ago that was posted on Workplace. So that's been really fun, and people, I can tell, are really, really enjoying that. And folks who maybe are a little more quiet, for example, in a meeting, are sharing a picture of them doing something over the weekend, which has been really cool.
Yeah, and at first, from when we started working together, I know that you were starting that transition to everybody being not necessarily local to Minnesota.
Yeah. I left that out. Yeah, that was another big reason for needing to do something like this, is that prior to COVID, we, like probably a lot of companies, we only were really looking to hire people who were local or willing to be local. And part of that was the business required that we have a lot of local clients, and probably 50% of our work back then was being done in person. Since COVID hit, that of course went away, and it hasn't really come back. I mean, just a little, I'd say. It's like, it used to be 50-50. It's probably 98-2 now, where, in the last 3 to 4 years, I've maybe done 5 in-person interviews.
Wow.
Yeah. So the nice thing about that is it allows us now to have folks who are remote, because now we can sort of do the work anywhere, and it's a kind of a niche business, and so or a niche specialty area, and so the pool is small, and it was hard to talk people into moving to Minnesota. In fact, a good story. We had have a woman on the team, Katie, who is a great consultant and leader for us, and she joined us early on and moved to Minnesota from North Carolina. After 1 year, said, "I can't handle these winters. I need to go back." And we had to part ways. Once COVID hit and we started, having remote folks, she's back with us now, and she's a great addition to the team. So yeah, so it's really helped us deliver this training to folks who are not, sitting side by side with us, which is, needed at this point in time.
I love that. I just going to highlight the fact that you said everybody's using it appropriately, because there's a lot of fear around letting your employees be social, but they're doing it whether you know it or not, right? Like they were still having conversations on Teams even before we had a more social space. But I know, so we love to think that our solutions are perfect and that there has been no challenges, but I know there have been some challenges, or whether we resolve them,
Yeah.
So maybe, for people who are thinking about, should I implement some kind of social learning network into my business? What are some of the challenges that you experienced, or that, you think they should think about before they go ahead with it?
Sure. Yeah. A couple come to mind, and I think we're making good progress on them. And I guess the one thing that I would give us some credit for too is we've just been really open in sort of, acknowledging those and calling those out and getting input from folks. So not trying to sort of scheme behind the scenes and think about, how can we get them to use this? Like, we're asking them, what do you need to be able to, use this more, or use this more effectively? So one of the things that came up was we use Microsoft Teams for our internal and external meetings, and to your point, our team was, conversing and sharing prior to workplace, and found out they were doing that over Teams. And so one of the things that we had to work through early on was, well, when do we use Teams and when do we use Workplace? So surprisingly to me, we just had to get really, really clear on that, like really concrete and specific, and it's clear now, and folks are using both, platforms the way that we've agreed to do so. But that was one thing that we had to talk about up front. The other is just what a lot of people would say, well, when should I look at Workplace, or how often should I look at Workplace? And so again, we just had to get, I wouldn't say prescriptive, we're not forcing people to do this, but more so just offering a lot of concrete guidance. So if you want to use Workplace more, here's what I would suggest. I would, this is what I do. I open up, we use Microsoft Dynamics. I open up Dynamics and Workplace and Teams, and they're up on my screen all day long. So I can, come and go. I can look at things here and there as I have time. And I think that's been helpful for folks, just to really literally just talk through, how do you actually, look at this throughout the day. We also gave people just ideas in terms of what they can share, or what they might share on the site, and that's been helpful. And then maybe I don't know that we haven't gotten feedback from the team on this, but one of the things that I'm thinking about is, we work really hard to be inclusive, and I think we are very inclusive, but, you can only do so much so fast, right? And so we really started out focusing on the consultant sort of path. We're recognizing we want to have some paths and some learning materials for everybody, right? So now we're starting to look at our client services team, and looking at a next step as potentially designing like a learning pathway for that group as well. So I wouldn't say that's a challenge, but maybe just something. Well, maybe it is a challenge, just remembering that you want to do sort of something for all groups, right? And of course, you got to start somewhere, right? But maybe what I've been challenging myself to do is sort of keep it top of mind and keep it moving forward.
Yeah, that's a great point. So when you do go to do it, will you do user-generated content, or will you be very structured about it? Just curious if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, if user-generated content, meaning from our team.
Yeah, like I know some of the client services team at this point, but
Yeah.
are they going to create some videos and
Oh, got it.
tools, or are you going to be very
Yeah.
structured and be like, this is how we're going to script everything
No,
out?
I like the way we did the consultant training pathway. Other than I think I was featured in the videos maybe more than I should have been, but I like the idea of having actual team members, record something, like an instructional video or something along those lines. So I would see us doing that again. I think the team really likes that, and I think it just makes it more relatable. And it's not, especially if it were a partner or somebody in some sort of an authority or leadership role at SKS. I wouldn't want them sort of saying this is how we do it, this is how we have to do it. I'd rather have it coming from the team, um, for for um, for that reason, right? To not sort of be perceived as sort of dictatorial, but also they know it better than we do, right? They're going to be better teachers than we are of all of that.
Yeah, I think we've seen a few team members at this point, and they've all done exceptional jobs.
Yeah,
So one of the concerns people sometimes have, I'm just curious if you've given, again, any thought to this. This is all
sure.
very off the cuff, so feel free to tell me if you don't want to talk about it.
No
But
problem.
sometimes people are like, oh, but what if someone leaves? Like, what's your response to that? Like, oh, there's this person in this video who no longer works here. Does it matter?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. We haven't had that happen yet, and maybe that was our strategy of having me on a lot of the videos. I'm not going anywhere, but I that certainly could happen for sure. And I don't know, I'm not too worried about that. I think you know, uh, you always have to deal with how do you talk about somebody leaving, right? How do you address both what maybe led to them leaving as well as people's reactions to that. And I think that would be true, regardless of whether they were maybe featured in an instructional video or not. So I'm not worried about that. I think I'm okay if that happens. I don't think we would feel the need to redo it, just because somebody left.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that way too. I'm like, well, most people leave on good terms, and the
Right.
person who
Right.
wouldn't leave on good terms is probably not the person who's picked up and
Yeah.
put this
Exactly.
great piece of content up there.
That's
But
right.
it's
Yeah.
interesting to hear it from the other side of the aisle.
Sure. Sure.
So what's next? We heard some client services training. Is there anything else you're thinking about?
Yeah. So one of the things that we're working on this year, I think I might have mentioned this on the show so far, is a more formalized training program. So and I think we've got a very good head start with what we've got in workplace right now. In fact, we actually just hired a new consultant last week, and he's a new consultant to us. He's making a bit of a transition from healthcare to the business world. So he's got experience. He was a leader in healthcare, so he's got business experience, and he designed a training program at that healthcare facility. So he knows a bit about these things, and we've gotten rave reviews from him this week on what we've been able to do in workplace. And he worked for a large healthcare organization. He said we didn't even have stuff like this. So he's been very impressed with what we've done on workplace, and so that also leads me to be confident in that. Yeah, we do have a really good head start on this training program. Part of the reason we're doing that too is a little bit of a strategic endeavor in that there aren't many, as I maybe mentioned early, there aren't a lot of places that are willing to provide training to new consultants, right?
Mhm.
Or put somebody who's not fully seasoned, so to speak, in front of a client. Whereas we have more willingness to do that with support, of course. And the idea being, well, if we've got this training program and we can maybe be a little bit known for that, which I think we are locally, maybe that keeps sort of the pipeline of talent, more consistent year to year. And so that's one we're working on. The other one that I'm thinking about, so I mentioned the learning pathways for other members of the team. And then the last one that I'm thinking about, and I'll probably reach out to you and your team at some point, Nicole, to talk this
Come
through would
on over,
be,
Nate. Yeah.
how might we design or implement a performance management process by using workplace or something else, if you would recommend something else. So we're trying to, as the team grows, we're getting a lot more questions around, well, when do you consider promotions, or when do you
Mhm.
consider raises, and we've sort of done it ad hoc over the years. As we're getting bigger, we're realizing we need to get some structure around that for their sake and for ours, right? And so, of course, want to do that with technology, and workplace seems to be a good place to look.
Yeah. I know early on in the process, we did start doing one of those skills inventories. So
Yeah,
this has nothing to do with the social learning network necessarily, but like that to me is the natural first step, is to look at that and give yourself a rubric of like, well, what does it take to be associate? What does it take
right.
to be principal?
Yeah, yeah,
What's in between
yeah.
there?
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I'm really monopolizing this conversation, which is wonderful. I don't know if Diego or Rocio, you have things you're curious about as Nate's talking here. Just feel free to jump in. Let me stop talking. Yeah, so I mean, I just want to crystallize some of the stuff we've been talking about. So
Yeah,
you've got this very complex set of needs, I think, for your team, and they really do rise to the occasion because you've built such a wonderful culture there. The social learning network helps, right? Because it facilitates putting those skills and development tracks into a
yeah,
place. And you can also have people sharing and talking and doing things. You can do your pulse checks in
yeah,
there. Really treat it holistically. And then you've got these big future plans. You know that your market is changing. You know that your needs are changing. It's interesting because I just heard you say your hiring profile changed a little bit.
yeah.
If you took someone from healthcare, not from like org psych
Not from
or
right out of school. Yeah.
yeah. So that was interesting. I mean, there's a lot of big things happening over at SKS. It's very
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. We oftentimes, I would say, typically the type of individual that we bring on board is either early career or maybe new to consulting, which is the case with this person I just mentioned. And part of the reason is that not that we're rigid about it, and not that we're not asking and open to feedback on how we do things at SKS, but we are really trying to gravitate toward having like an SKS way, right, of doing things. And whereas in the past, in our evolution, as a lot of probably small professional services firms start out, it was very sort of founder focused, and the partner, sort of did whatever they wanted, right, and they did it the way that
Mhm.
they wanted, and so that made it hard sometimes to come together and work as a team. And so we're really trying to get clear and consistent around what's the SKS way. And we've just found that folks who are new to consulting are much more receptive to that, and maybe don't already have their preferred approaches. Again, not to say that we would never hire someone who has experience, but and we are willing to make changes, but we're also driving for consistency as opposed to having folks do things in a one-off way. And so we've had good luck again with newer career or folks who are new to consulting.
I totally don't take that philosophy at all, Nate. I feel like most of our team here, interestingly enough, sorry, we started as learning design interns, and everybody's kind of
Yeah,
grown into their path, not intentionally, but I found the same thing to be true.
sure.
Yeah. So I would ask just one more question, and then Diego Rocio, I'm going to stop talking. I know you have questions. But I guess I'm just wondering, there's this concept of the network effect, right? Like people want to be part of the team because they know the value of the network, or people want to work with SKS because they know the value of the network. Do you see that being true? Do you, and if so, like what do you think is unique and special about your network that draws people to it?
Yeah, are you sort of thinking about the network beyond SKS?
Yeah, I think of it in two ways. So early on when we were talking about, your business as we did our needs analysis, you talked about wanting SKS to be known because there
Yeah,
is this
yeah,
network effect. Like you wanted universities to hear your name,
yeah,
and you wanted this training, this social learning network, not just because you wanted the training, which you did, but you like wanted something that made you stand out. Like
yeah,
people
yeah,
wanted to be associated. That's what I guess what I'm getting at. Like the
yeah,
network effect, they want
right,
to be associated with SKS, and
yeah,
the value of the people inside of it then amplifies
yeah,
the value to the perception of value, right?
sure.
A little complex, but
Oh,
anyway,
I think I know what you mean. Yeah,
yeah. Do you find that to be true? Do you do you think there is a network effect that happens when it comes to SKS?
yeah, I think so for sure. I would say, yeah, I actually was going to start out by saying I think it's maybe more. I see it more as it relates to hiring and sort of employment brand. But just as I was thinking that, I see it with clients as well. So maybe I'll say something about both. On the client side, we have not done much marketing traditionally. A lot of our new business is word of mouth, and so much so that we did a customer voice interview survey maybe 2 years ago now, and like a common theme was HR leaders would say SKS is our best kept secret, right? And we're sort of saying, well, we don't want to be a secret. We don't want to be a secret. So, and I know that these same folks do, provide good word of mouth, referrals and recommendations as well. So I definitely think that we see that play out there. With the employment sort of brand piece, I would say that our team members are probably even better than me for sure. Maybe the partners at sort of selling SKS. We just get great feedback in terms of being a good place to work and supportive, inclusive, empowering. All of those things, and so they go to conferences, right? As I mentioned, we encourage folks to go to conferences throughout the year, and when they do, they're often our representatives at like the hiring booths or the interview rooms, and so I've heard from folks that we've interviewed that they do a great job of sort of speaking to what they really love about SKS, and the onboarding stuff has come up as well, and so I do think we're starting to get a little word of mouth around the technology and the processes that we have around training new consultants. So, and that was the goal. So we're trying to ride that wave and keep that going.
Oh, that's really cool. And you can do more, right? Because now it's not just you and, your 3 partners spreading the word. It's your whole team.
Right. And if if you're looking to hire, let's say, early career folks, they're going to be, hearing, I'll call it a testimonial. That's a little too formal, but hearing that from, a peer is going to be more powerful than me coming in and saying, hey, we've got this great, onboarding, platform. And they're going to look at me and say, yeah, it's probably all paper and pencil. Right. Whereas our team can go and relate to folks. And I think it's just more credible for new employees.
Very cool. All right, as promised, I'm done. I'm not going to say anything else for at least a few minutes.
We're just listening. You guys interact. I would say though, like, I have friends that work in like really big company names, and we have worked with bigger companies, and like what you guys have going on, it's like years ahead of like what you would think this like corporations that you would think have it together. I talk to my friends, I'm like, how do you function, having this like onboarding or thinking about these things, right? Like employee onboarding, employee satisfaction, training. How do we move forward? How do we grow your career? Like there's a lot of organizations out there that just function like that, and people just fake it till they make it, kind of.
Right.
So
that's good to hear.
So that's always, and I love seeing like all the interactions, and we get pinged sometimes when people post things. So we're definitely seeing that social aspect also.
That's awesome.
Not just the onboarding, but people sharing their life, which might not have happened like in person, right? Like you don't just randomly go talk to somebody about the wedding you assisted over the weekend.
That's right. Yeah.
So I really enjoy that, and I would love to know, like, what difference do you see pre-employing the social learning network, and then after you employed it, like social wise, like how that impact?
Yeah, I would say that I do see a difference. So we try to bring everyone. So we have, as I mentioned, a pretty remote team at the moment. So we're a team of about 22, and we've got, I'd say, maybe nine or 10 here in Minnesota, and then everyone else is kind of spread out across the country. And we get together quarterly. And I would say that we've always had a pretty good team dynamic in terms of when people get together. Everyone seems comfortable and relaxed and all of that, which which we didn't know for sure, right? Like the four partners anyway we were so used to working in the office, right? And that's how you sort of connect with people. And so we didn't know, are we going to bring people together quarterly and it's going to be awkward, or people aren't going to talk? And even so, I'd say before workplace, we were pleasantly surprised that it wasn't awkward. I would say since workplace, it's happening faster. So like before workplace, we get together typically for 2 days. It might take a couple hours, right, of us easing into it, or we might have to do a little bit of an icebreaker, right, to sort of get people, warmed up a bit. We don't need to do that anymore. Like I'll walk into, one of those meetings. I'm oftentimes one of the last people to show up, and like it's loud. It's so loud in there because everyone is just talking and having fun and socializing. So I think that workplace has allowed the connection to sort of remain in between those quarterly meetings, where it doesn't feel like there's as much catch up that you have to do, the next time you see someone.
That's cool.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I'm
one thing I'll share with you guys too. So Nicole, I picked your brain a while back in terms of, how do we increase? So a lot of people look at workplace and respond to workplace. What we're trying to do is maybe increase the extent to which people initiate maybe a post or something, or a discussion on workplace. And the last time we got together for our quarterly meeting, I finally took a look at some of the analytics that they have in workplace around usage, and I pulled some of that, and I recognized the two people who were, at sort of the top in terms of postings. And that really sort of lit a fire, I think, for some people. I mean, they were having fun with it, right? But some people were saying, "Oh man, I want to be on that list next time." And the people who were on it are saying, I'm going to keep that up, right? I'm going to, try to repeat next quarter. So just making them aware that, we can kind of track these things and having a little bit of fun with it. And also, I don't go in there saying, I'm the workplace master, right? And you need to follow my lead. I acknowledge that, yeah, I could do more too, right? And we all can do a little bit more. And so it's not viewed as like this thing that the leadership is sort of making everyone do. It's, we all want to learn. We all want to be connected. We all want to get better. And this is a great platform for that. So let's work together to figure out, how to make the most of it.
Yeah. I also think because leadership is involved, people are more likely to also be involved because they have kind of like champions in a way. Like you guys are champions for workplace. So they're like, well, it's one of those things like if you weren't doing it, then maybe they will be like, well, if they're not doing it, why do I have to do it?
Exactly. Yeah, I think you're right.
That's also very important.
Yeah.
And Rocio, I think you bring up a good point, because I think we talked about that a couple episodes ago about that dance hall theory. And I think having the leadership involved, like you said, is really important in driving that. And I think, finding those champions for change and those people who are going to be the first to the dance floor and really push and drive it, I think is really important. And I think it's, very great that you as a leader are showing that you are seeing this in your business. And that's why it's making it effective. So.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think at first maybe the leaders were a little, I wouldn't say hesitant, but just not wanting to, wanting to create space, right, for the rest of the team to do some of that. And after a little while, we realized, well, we kind of need to lead the way. And I talked with my partners and got their commitment to do that. And I think we've seen some positive momentum since then.
Yeah.
We have so we use it too, which by now. And like my favorite channel on our whole thing is the Share What You Learn channel. And so I think I've been a little more active on there. I've been learning a lot. But it's cool because I get to learn about, what Rocio's learning and Diego's learning and Katie's learning. And, we have a social media person, and he shared something the other week, like wanted to be involved, isn't, is a freelancer. So like not necessarily part of the team, but felt comfortable sharing. And I think that's just really wonderful. Yeah. And we've made it a point, and you do it this too. But we don't just shove things up there, which is, I think, the difference. Sometimes you're like, we post things, we share emails, nobody reads the article, or whatever. But we're conscious to be like, this is the thing I found interesting about it, or here's a quote, what do you think about this line? Or like to point them somewhere, and that's made an impact in like giving them a call to action, just like you would on any social platform.
Yeah.
so that people respond. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love seeing it from the team and from
Yeah.
peers as well. It's cool to see what everybody bubbles up.
It is cool. Yeah.
Well, hey, is there anything you want to share that we haven't asked you about yet, or that we should have asked you?
Yeah. I don't think so. I think we've been pretty thorough. I guess the only thing that's this isn't super profound, but what popped into my head that I didn't mention yet is just not everybody, especially when we're super busy, right? Not everybody is out there reading every issue of HBR or all those other publications. And so what we did is created I think we called it recent news or headlines is kind of the section, and then we have a feed from right now. I think it's HBR and McKinsey, so their posts and their publications kind of feed into that. And so we encourage folks that, hey, if you have a cancellation or a free moment, go look through that. And if you see something interesting, post it and ask a question or do something like that. So just trying to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, so there's guidelines, right? It's like we're reading the Art of Community. It's like hosting a party. You got to give people the invitation. You got to set them up so they know what to expect when they get to the event. You got to give a little structure so everyone's not just standing there next to the punch bowl, wondering what to do or who to talk to. But then you let them go because you can't control all your guests and tell them where to be and how to respond all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. It's
well,
a good analogy.
Yeah. Okay, Rocio, I see you're going in.
I was just gonna say, the level of interaction, right? Like I was saying, we do get pings on people posts on what you guys do and the brown bags and all of that. The level of interactions also speak to a level of the psychological safety that your employees feel, where they feel like sharing those things and that it's going to be accepted and it's going to be reciprocated. And there's a level of that needs to go into social learning networks too, because people are putting themselves out there for their bosses to see, right? Like
exactly. I agree.
So
that's a really good call out. That's we've done a lot. I mentioned some of the team development work that we do with clients, and a lot of emphasis on psychological safety, and of course we prioritize that at SKS as well. And one of the things I think is really cool about workplaces, it gives an opportunity for a partner, for example, to learn from a junior consultant. Right. I just think that's so cool to show for a partner to, be vulnerable or humble enough to, sort of say, hey, can you help me with this? Or, hey, can you teach me about this? And what a great experience for that consultant too.
Yeah. Yeah. Not cross-generational, but I guess cross-positional.
Yeah. Right.
Across the hierarchy. And that doesn't happen in, if you just have a static line of training to complete.
Right. Right.
And the idea is that you're filling the bank.
Yeah. Yeah.
But even cross. Sorry, Nicole. I feel like you're trying.
No, I go for it. This is a social experience, and we're bound to
generational, right? Because every time you're hiring, eventually everybody's just gonna get younger, right? And new technologies are gonna come out.
That's already happening.
That the partners might not necessarily, technology-wise. Not to say you're old, but
I think you said it.
All right, Nate's never coming back now.
Can't take it back.
It's recorded. That way, right? Like, Diego is the youngest team member for us, and sometimes he has ideas that we don't even think about, right? Because he's aware of all these new things that are going on, the new trends, the new way of saying things, right? Like, so.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It makes me think of when we first started rolling out Workplace. As I said, there's always some work you need to do around sort of adoption across the team. It was probably the hardest for the four partners. We are of a different generation than most of our team, and most of us are not super active on social media. And so so as we were doing this, we didn't really know what to do, right? I don't have a Facebook account. I don't do anything on social media really. And so the guidance probably was just as useful for us as it was for the rest of the team.
I'm done, Nicole. You could.
Yeah, really good.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. That is definitely the downside of video versus in person. It's a little easier to read the cue of leaning in versus stopping and pausing in the in the conversation. But I'm going to start to wrap us up because we've definitely taken up quite a bit of your time, Nate, and we really appreciate you sharing your experiences, your perspective on all of this. But SKS is doing really cool things. Like I said, I had the privilege of going through a assessment ask. I'm sure there are some added bells and whistles for a client, but I've seen the process from behind the scenes, and I've seen it from the training end, and I've met with your team, and you really are doing awesome things. We haven't met anyone else who's doing what you're doing or necessarily brings the same partnership, perspective to it. So how can people find you if they want to learn more about, let's start with SKS Consulting first.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So we have a website, of course, that folks could check out, and we, with the help of our marketing person, we are trying to do a little more in terms of putting some blogs and white papers and things like that out there, and that's at sksconsulting.org. And then we've also got a LinkedIn page, and so if you were to just search SKS Consulting Group, that would pop up, and we'll share some of those resources there as well.
Awesome. And then do you remember a long time ago watching a webinar? Is that on your website?
Yeah,
does that live in
it
YouTube?
is on the website. It is on the website. Yep.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Nate. Please tell the whole SKS team we say hello.
I will.
Again, just thank you so much for your time.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
You can post this episode, share it on social learning networks. So everybody can
that sounds great. That sounds great. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Well, for those of you who are watching, your homework assignment, we'll share that in just a minute. But remember that we invite you to listen to the episode, to try the assignment, to get in the community, hear about, what others think, to share what you learned in this episode, and get social. So we will see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you.
There's so much we have learned from working with Nate and his team to build their social learning network and strengthen their business. But if I had to pick the top 3 things, they would be: 1, build structures to support people while giving them the agency to pursue the path that best suits their needs. 2, leverage technology to create a visible learning culture, one that evolves organically. And 3, trust your employees to share with and learn from one another. So, how can you apply all of this talk about continuous and networked learning? Here's an experiment. We have learned that recognition is a big motivator for participating in learning and knowledge sharing at work. Take a moment to list 3 people who deserve recognition for their recent learning or knowledge sharing, and then create an action plan for recognizing them appropriately. While you think about that list, focus on the kinds of attitudes and accomplishments you want others to imitate. For example, completing a course may be celebration worthy, but maybe just getting through it isn't really the thing you need to influence your people to do. On the other hand, if you saw somebody apply recent training on the job, and that is what you want people to do, then that is the kind of thing you will recognize publicly. After you have completed the experiment, take stock on how it's impacted the environment. How did the person recognized respond? Did anyone notice or celebrate with you? Did anyone's behavior change? You can check out the full assignment brief in the Social Learning Lab community on Facebook. Well, that takes us to the end of our first season. Can you believe it? We have covered so much ground, from social influence to XR to psychological safety to social learning networks and more. What was your favorite episode? We'd love to know. And equally important, who do you want to hear next season? Share your opinions with us in the community. Before we sign out for the season, we'd also like to ask you a favor because we want to see this podcast make an impact. If you've enjoyed the episode, please leave us a review, like, subscribe, or share it so that we can continue to build a supportive group of social learning enthusiasts. Thank you so much for being a part of our community, LabMate. Until next time, keep making learning that matters.